Good evening and welcome. Call the meeting to order. This is the February 27th, 2023 regularly scheduled meeting of the school committee. It is 6:14. This meeting is being both audio and videotaped this evening, and I would ask that everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay. If I could ask for roll calls, then you want to start us out, please?
Sure. Asquith, Secretary. Pamela Blair, Assistant Superintendent for Business.
Heather Brown, Director of Curriculum.
Gordon Smith, Superintendent of Schools.
Gregory Thompson.
Antonella Rochella.
Elizabeth Marcin Boucher.
Amy Delenta.
Patrick, Student Representative.
Julie Boucher, Student Representative.
Sarah Trulio.
You all. We have minutes for approval this evening. I take a motion, please.
The motion. To approve the February 6th, 2023 regular session meeting minutes.
Motion made by
A second.
second by Amy. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. That carries 5-0. Thank you. Committee and subcommittee communications. Julia, would you like to start us out tonight?
Okay, so to begin, the midterm, the midpoint of term 3 will be this Wednesday, March 1st. And then on Wednesday, March 1st, in room 107, there will be a meeting for any students who are interested in taking AP chemistry next year. I believe it's with Ms. Tersh. Next week on March 10th and 11th, which is Friday and Saturday, Spartanum will be happening, and it's 7 p.m. for all guests. And a couple announcements, like for seniors, is that the link for ordering caps and gowns is in Mr. Page's weekly update and are due by March 15th, and they cost $40.70. Another reminder is that the senior banquet is March 31st at the Delaney House. And the senior class is returning with their final tour of Italy fundraiser with March 9th at Fazio's and March 23rd at Donardo's. And for a couple of sports updates is that spring sports night will take place on Tuesday, March 14th at 6 p.m. And you can contact Mr. McGee for any other information. And then the girls ski team won a league championship for this year. And the boys hockey had a win against Westside, but lost against Longmeadow in their Western Mass final.
Excellent. Thank you, Julia. John?
I think that sums it up pretty well, what we said.
Fair enough.
I will highlight definitely the Tour of Italy fundraiser for the senior class. That's usually a big moneymaker for us, so.
What are the two restaurants left
The
are?
restaurants left are Fazio's and Donardo's, so,
We're thankful for their participation as well.
yes.
And there was one other restaurant already went, right?
Yep, pizza
The
shop.
shop. Yeah, thankful for their participation as well. Yes, thank you. Amy.
The one thing I wanted to share was that the executive director of the LPC, I'm not sure if we talked about this last time, but he's retiring. And so there's a search that is going to be underway. And so I just wanted to bring that and share that with.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mr. Joel.
Mhm.
Great. Okay. Good to know. I don't have anything.
Nope, I don't have anything.
Sarah, anything tonight?
We had a positive meeting with the collaborative committee. Last time, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago now when we met. Talked a little bit more about the calendar, talked about some recognition events that will be coming up for faculty, including the Hall of Fame. And then I would just also of note that this was the first ever Western Mass appearance, correct, for the ice hockey team for East Long Meadow Public Schools?
In the Western Mass final,
Yeah.
not first ever in the Western Mass final. But I think it's now called the PVIC tournament.
Maybe that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that may exactly be it. When the state tournament took over the last 2 years where they adopted a new format, people, I think in Western and Central Mass thought possibly that their regional tournaments would go away. But it was granted that each league could develop a tournament, and the PVIC has taken the that and created tournaments throughout the fall and in the winter sports.
Yeah. which is great.
Yeah.
That's
Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Sarah. And then we have a building, high school building open forum coming up.
Yes.
We scheduled-
Are we moving into,
Oh, I just wanted to mention it.
yeah,
Oh, it's on the later on.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. We'll do it later. Okay,
okay,
thank you. That was gonna be my big
okay.
announcement, but
Oh,
it's
but
already
we did
later.
reschedule the school building.
School
committee.
building is next Thursday, right?
Yeah, so instead of the second, it's now on the 9th.
Okay, opportunity for visitors tonight, seeing none. Move right on to the first order of business, which is a reminder that we have no, building project public forum, March 16th. Gordon, you want some more detail on that?
Sure. So as all of you know, and the many viewers at home may or may not know, we have been trying as often as we can to get more information out to the larger community regarding the high school building project and the feasibility study. So that started way back in the summer. We did National Night Out. We had some online forums as well as surveys. Then we moved into September. We had a public forum at the senior center in September. Then we visited with at least one PTO. And we also had a public forum at the high school back in November. Since then, we've also visited with, I apologize that it wasn't a PTO, it was the high school school council. And then we started to visit with PTOs. So far, we have met with Maple Shades PTO and Meadowbrook's PTO. And actually tomorrow night, I'll be presenting, well, maybe depending on if it's not canceled. There may be a message going out about school tomorrow, but we'll keep that a mystery and surprise. But I'll be presenting at some point to the CPAC, which is the Special Education Parent Advisory. Yeah, Parent Advisory Committee. Just giving them an update on where we are with the feasibility study and the project. But the larger public forum that I think, Mr. Thompson, you were mentioning, which is on our agenda, is happening on March 16th, day before St. Patrick's Day. So, don't want to get in the way of that holiday. But on the 16th, when people are just ramping up, but are looking for something to do, come on out to East Long Meadow High School, cafeteria at 6 p.m. And we'll be presenting where we are in the feasibility study, where we've gotten to in terms of design options and thoughts, and where we hope to go between now in March and November 7th of 2023, when hopefully there will be a townwide vote on this project. So we'll have as much information as we can provide at that public forum, and then we'll continue to have both smaller and possibly, at least one, if not more, larger public forums in the future.
Excellent. Exciting stuff.
Thank you.
Okay, moving right along, we have the East Long Meadow Public School mid-cycle data presentation.
Okay, so Ms. Brown is joining us, and we have up on the screens the presentation. It's also in your packets. So this is our mid-cycle data. If you remember back in the fall when we received our both state accountability data, but also our first assessment with iReady, at least K through 8. We put together a presentation, data presentation at that point as to where we were. And now we're looking at where we are as we've come through just recently, the halfway point of the school year. And after this meeting, at the next meeting, the entire leadership team will be here, and they'll give you more information specifically to their schools, where they are with regard to their SMART goals. So this is data similar to the presentation that we did at the beginning of the year. So one of the things that we did at the beginning of the year and do 2 more times, this being one of those 2, is taking a look at both social, emotional, and school climate, social, emotional status of where our students are with the K2. Remember, because these are our youngest students, this actually is a situation where our teachers are responding in terms of how they see certain things. The nice thing here is, if you remember at the beginning of the year, we saw a few red arrows, if not all red arrows, compared to what they saw in the spring of last year, in terms of things like emotional regulation, social awareness, engagement, and so forth. And a lot of that is because we were beginning the year. I think we gave that out in late September. Students were learning new routines. And so again, this is our staff, our pre-K to 2 staff looking at their classrooms now. And it's nice to see that they're feeling that certain things are improving. Classroom effort is up, 6 percentage points. Engagement is up 6 percentage points, but you're seeing most of these areas up. So that was good to see. As we move to 3 through 5, now our students are answering, and we're still seeing positive marks, especially in terms of supportive relationships. And that's really centered around, do they have an adult in the school to whom they can go to problem solve? And it's nice that we are seeing high marks, and you'll see that across the district. But we're seeing some things that certainly we need to dig into more, where we're seeing a little bit of a downturn, 4 points and 5 points in school climate. And that's feeling as though, they feel a sense of belonging and engagement on a daily basis in their school, welcoming. It's still 82% are feeling that, yes, these things are happening, but it's down from where it was. School safety, that's predominantly around how they feel they're engaging others. Have they seen or witnessed bullying? Have they been bullied? And so we're seeing, a little bit of a downturn there. And so that's certainly things that we'll have to look into. And certainly are. I mean, anytime you have any type of disciplinary incident, whether it be designated bullying or something else, there's always an investigation, follow-up, and so forth. But more importantly, in the follow-up, we want make sure students are feeling safe and feeling like they're in a situation where they're always going to be safe, regardless of what they may be engaging in. And so those are things that we need to dig into deeper.
So this is Maple Shade and Mountain View kids.
Yep.
And this is the broad stroke. We're also able to kind of break down and see kids that are reporting, for example, a lot of challenging feelings or not a lot of positive feelings, so that we can follow up with them. So it's also part of our MTSS work.
Can you break this down
Doing that as
between
well.
the schools? If you felt like you needed to.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they said they could.
Yeah, so the MTSS teams at each building can look at, one of the things that they're supposed to look at is processes.
Mhm.
How are our processes working for some of these things? If students are feeling like this or that is or is not happening, how do we create a different process that might be more supportive and engaging? So there's some of the things that we have to look at.
Do we have? I don't think we do, like advisory groups for the kids, or I don't know.
At the elementary level?
timing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yep.
we do.
They have community circle.
They have community circle at all the elementary schools. They also have the counselors not only do the second step program in teaching it in all classrooms, but they also then, based on referrals and different information that they may be receiving from teachers or parents, they put together groups, whether it be a lunch group or just a social group, and they meet with them pretty regularly. Our
So
counselors in all buildings are really active.
is this stuff being addressed during that time? Yes.
Yeah, so that's the idea, that the MTSS can look at the systems and that the counselors can kind of drill down to see kids that might need extra support, but it's both the proactive and the reactive.
Okay.
Yeah, for second, is the second step just end like at 5th graders or go into middle school too?
The program itself does go into
Yes.
middle school. but
We don't use it in.
I kind of hope that we're doing something a little more
They do.
upgraded than that. Okay.
A few years ago, we started through the advisory program. We being the middle school administration, creating with their counselors plans, lesson plans that can be implemented during advisory, and over 3 years created individual lesson plans that can be used by the entire school at each grade level.
They have an advisory each week that's still dedicated to SEL.
And I know I'm off topic, but does that go into internet safety and at all or anything like that? Do they do
Does,
that frequently?
They definitely do
They
that.
do multiple times over the course of,
Maybe less
pound it in.
so, although I think they touch on it at the elementary schools. But that might be worth, one of our elementary schools did invite in the district attorney's youth advisory group, which John knows about. And I believe we're trying to schedule it at the other elementary school. But maybe we can talk after if that hasn't happened yet.
And do they take these surveys again at the end of the year?
Yes. Yep. 3 times a year. So 6 through 12, again, you're seeing high marks in the supportive relationships, but we are seeing, you know, a little bit of a downturn in the school safety piece and, you know, students experiencing positive feelings on sort of a daily basis. And 63%, this is in terms of the positive end of it, that 63% are definitely feeling positive feelings and 58% are not feeling challenging feelings. Both are still high nationally, but those are areas that certainly we should dig into. And that's where, you know, our counselors might look more specifically as to what groups of students are answering these questions this way. And look at not only that, but some other aspects of what's going on in their lives, and then, you know, start to be strategic and supportive in helping and assisting.
now are they, because the high school doesn't have, not that I think it was probably utilized in the best way, but the high school doesn't have like, you know, that time in the morning together anymore. Are they finding they're having different ways that they're getting to kids that need it?
I think that they are finding ways. I think that they're probably gonna start to look at a possible tweak of the schedule to help with some of this.
Times,
Yeah, but I think that all of these are in discussion at the moment because of looking at stuff like this, looking at some of our data. They're looking at how can they offer more support, when can they offer more support
okay,
in order to.
because one from almost,
Generally, you're talking about a smaller group
you know,
to and when would you schedule that smaller group?
I just also want to point out that this 58% of kids who are not reporting a lot of challenging feelings is still the 80th to 99th percentile in the nation.
Hmm.
So that just kind of gives us an idea of what our kids are going through nationwide.
And one of the things, just if you see on the screen here, you get that 80th and 99th percentile if we stay straight up in the survey with the questions that Panorama gives us, because Panorama is utilized broadly enough that then they can create these percentiles. Those measurements go away when we ask more specific questions and change the survey in any way. But we felt last year as a district and a leadership team that we need to drill down and ask more questions regarding things like school climate and school safety. And so we'll still get the measurement, as you can see, you know, down 4, up 4, whatever it may be, but you're not going to get the national percentile anymore because it's no longer that same survey going out as broadly.
How many questions are on the survey?
We try to stay under 25, I
Well,
believe.
this one, actually, the 6 to 12 is 36 questions.
Okay, so
However,
I'm incorrect on
but
that.
it says that it takes about 6 to 7 minutes to complete. So yes, we're trying to keep it under 10 minutes, and we had a great response from. We've always had trouble getting response from high schoolers, but this time there was a lot of push, and a Dunkin' Donuts.
We had a little
gift card.
Dunkin' Donuts gift card raffled off, but
We had a huge response rate, which was great.
When do they take these surveys?
During.
dedicate a certain period during, I think it was the
English,
Thursday or Friday before break.
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So one of the classes, generally, there'll be an announcement. It might be also in the weekly bulletin that, you know, this is coming up. 10 minutes of this block will be reserved to take this survey. In this case, I don't know if it was in the weekly bulletin, but I definitely heard the announcement about the Dunkin' Donuts gift card that was going to be raffled off for,
We got great response, so that's perfect.
yeah. So, and that's something that we've discussed as a leadership team, as students are, getting older in the grades. Are they taking this seriously? Are they being sincere in their responses? So those are things we always have to weigh as we're looking at the data we receive. Some of that you're going to have to find out through digging down and saying, this is interesting, you have responded this way, and this way on this survey. But then I look at sort of grades and it's, it seems like, wow, you're killing it. In terms of, there's a disconnect, and maybe that's true. There's a disconnect. They're not feeling great about the environment, but they're still showing incredible academic success. And so those are things that we should know. And so those are the things that our counselors and administrators are digging into as we get this information. Good.
Because as we know, it's hard for kids to learn when they're not feeling safe and included in all of this.
True.
All right.
So this is the iReady data that, as I said, goes K through 8. Ms. Brown and I will be going back and forth basically as we were doing on some of the other slides here. But this gives you an idea both of the aggregate, and then as you're going to see, similar to what we did with some of the accountability data, because the state does it as well. And in our report card at the beginning of the year, gave us that large chart that we used, if you remember, that showed our subgroups. We've started to break down, because iReady will allow us to do this, the subgroups as well. And so it's interesting as you start to break that down. The nice thing is we are seeing growth. We are seeing more of the movement across the line graph here, from the red to the green. Interestingly enough, you're seeing more growth, as we were talking earlier before the meeting began. You are seeing more growth, quicker growth at this point in the mid-year in ELA across all grade levels than in math. So that's something that we need to be very aware of, and we need to continue to support and have different interventions in place.
How come the difference in the number of students?
So I was just gonna say, kindergarten's not included in this. They
First.
start much later because they feel like the kids aren't really ready to do a computer-based assessment. And I just wanted to point that out too, this is really a universal screener that kind of gives us this broad strokes and where to look, but K-2 has a lot of diagnostic assessments that they have around math, the AVMR. They look at phonemic awareness, phonics. So a lot of other assessments that we use in the MTSS teams to figure out, where kids are at. But this is good information for us because eventually this is K-8. By the end of the year, you'll have 8 in there as well. In terms of just seeing that big picture.
So K is not in either of these assessments, then is that what you're saying?
Not in here right now. Yeah, because you can't compare. They don't have the
The earlier.
beginning of the year. They're on a whole different cycle.
So at the top, there's students assessed 1461, 1658.
So
It's the same cohort,
it's the first grade through 8th grade, basically.
but there's 200 more in the second
Don't
assessment
pick up
than the first.
A in this assessment, because we don't do them in the fall, but we do them in the winter.
It says only 1 to 8.
So yeah, they're not in this chart right now because you can't compare them to the.
Right, so but you have 200 less that were assessed the first time than the second.
Nope, this is just out of our 1,600.
Oh, out of.
Who could be.
I thought it was the first and the second. I see.
1,461. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
sorry.
Yep.
And I can pull up that kindergarten data if folks are interested too, but again, it's pretty baseline data. And it's hard to be below grade level when you're first starting off kindergarten, right?
It's true.
Right.
So as you look at, you're starting the aggregate that, as we said, you're seeing movement across towards the green, basically from right to left. You're also seeing that as you look at the aggregate for all schools, you're seeing the movement towards the green. We're reducing the red. The nice thing would be if we could, get even lower than some of the double digits we're seeing in the red. And so that's where, our interventions and some of the things that you'll hear from the principals about what they're doing and how that is faring as they've gone through the first half of the year.
So the goal is to get everyone to the green by the end of the year. And so the idea of that growth versus the stretch growth is that for kids who are starting the year, one grade level or 2 grade levels behind, not only are we seeing that the teachers are helping with that growth that they need to, but a lot of times we have to accelerate that. And that's when the challenge comes in, is like trying to catch up those gaps. But in all of these, right now, we have 60% in Birchland Park that are at or above grade level in reading. 52 in Maple Shade, 45 in Meadowbrook for first and second, and 60% at Mountain View. So those are great numbers for the middle of the year.
This is a new chart for us, but
Yeah.
Ms. Brown. The idea here, as you're looking at this, the upper right quadrant where you see high growth, high performance or high performance, high growth. Ideally, that's where you'd like to see all of your grade levels and all of your students ending up. And we're seeing that as we hit the midpoint, that a lot of our grade levels are not only approaching, but are already in that area. Obviously, kindergarten taking only one test.
They can't show growth.
Right, they can't show growth at the moment, so they're showing high performance, which is nice to see. Sorry, did I miss anything else?
No, we want everybody in that top right corner, and we're pretty close.
Just starting to break down, as we talked about at the beginning, some of our subgroups and I think they're calling it low income. I think economically disadvantaged was last year's term. Now, if you remember our accountability from the fall, they're calling it low income. And that was a subgroup that has grown considerably over the last few years in ELPS. And so it's certainly a subgroup that we want to make sure that we're aware as to how they're experiencing the curriculum and succeeding academically and growing and so forth. Again, here we're seeing that they are showing some growth, although it might be a little bit slower than what we're seeing in the aggregate. And certainly you can see the comparison, non-economically disadvantaged versus yes, economically disadvantaged. You already flipped.
Now, are the students who are you finding that there's like a language barrier with any of those kids that are maybe just coming to this area?
So that's interesting. I mean, we've broken it out in multiple subgroups where you will see English language learners and you will see low income or economically disadvantaged. The interesting part, which I think you're getting at, is that there's crossover.
Yeah, there is.
There's crossover in these groups. You may have someone who fits into low income, special education, and ELL.
Okay.
And so it's interesting as you break it out, but then not only does DESE with their data break out all the subgroups, but then they also give you the high needs group, which then puts them all back together.
Yeah.
In terms of representing special education, ELL, and low income, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah.
And just to speak for the new literacy curriculum, it's really about building up that content knowledge and that background knowledge and that vocabulary, rather than writing about or reading about, writing about your own experiences, right? Because it doesn't give an even playing field when, someone who has more money might have more advantages to travel and go other places and experience different things. So we're trying to level that playing field and remove that barrier by in the curriculum as much as we can. Same with special education. That's why there's a push for universal design for learning, so that we're removing all the barriers that we can so that all kids can access the curriculum.
And a lot of our professional development has been around building the capacity of our teachers in understanding universal design for learning. Again, we're seeing that same movement across left to right. But as you break down to the different subgroups, we may be seeing the subgroups are showing that achievement level at a little slower pace.
This one was interesting though, because the difference was 12 versus 14, so it's not a big difference. So they're moving in that pace and we're filling, but when kiddos are, you have gaps, right? And they're starting a little bit behind the 8 ball, then you have to kind of speed that growth up. But comparatively, growth was the same. Here's that ELO.
Okay.
You want to say something about that?
Sure. This is another one where our ELL went from 19% at or above grade level to 29%, which is a 10-point increase. And non-ELLs were 44% to 56%, which is a 12-point increase. So again, those increases are similar. It's just a lot of times a barrier is that your first language is not English and you're reading and writing in English. The interesting thing about East Longmeadow, which I think is something to celebrate, is that while we have high populations of kiddos who are multi-language learners and needing extra support at the elementary level, huge population of our kids flap out, meaning that they no longer need English language supports. And that's just a testament to what everyone's doing.
It's,
And so then this then breaks, I'm sorry.
it's the call.
Oh,
Oh, that's what mine is. You're waiting for that.
No school tomorrow.
Like how he's super.
Finally.
Super, yeah.
Our seniors finally got a snow day.
I was gonna ask you before the meeting. so-
you're welcome.
It's a ventriloquist too. You can make a phone call while I'm talking to the
Right,
meeting.
while presenting and drinking water. Phone's actually ringing with it. Sorry about that. I didn't know how long we might go tonight. So this is then again, another look, breaking down, not necessarily by the subgroups we were previously talking about, but breaking it down by race or ethnicity. And again, you're seeing a couple different things. You're seeing the growth, but it's also, I think, important to realize that our student population is becoming much more diverse than even it was, I'd say 5-10 years ago. And so that's something that we need to be aware of, and we need to make sure that we're, sorry.
My phone's ringing now.
Sorry.
We see who rates, Heather, by the way.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I haven't done mine yet, so I don't read it.
Just to piggyback on that, I was just at an Equity and Diversity Committee meeting at the high school today, and there's students there, and they were, among other things, talking about how important it is to be represented and see themselves in the curriculum. So again, the curriculum that we have for the K-5 is all about the windows and the mirror. So being able to see yourself represented, but also being able to see other people and other perspectives so that we do learn about other folks and build that empathy and create a more inclusive place. But I thought it was interesting that that was one of the things that they brought up right away, is how important that is.
But how and when are students categorized by race? When, meaning, when I sign my student up for school,
Parents actually make.
check, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And the Massachusetts race codes are very, very complicated. So basically it's by combinations of identities. And so they have whether you identify as Latinx or not, and then all the different races that you identify with. So there's hundreds of different combinations and codes. iReady just kind of combines,
But in our enrollment packet, we given. the
That's 'cause of Desi.
whole- Yes,
All of
the
it, yeah.
whole spectrum,
Yeah.
which I'm sure, well, I know always causes a lot of discussion and questions because it's confusing. But interesting as you start to look and want to make sure that we're being responsive and being implementing culturally responsive teaching, which is something that we've also done with professional development over the last few years.
The last one here is ethnicity. And again, it's broken down that way because you can identify as Latino or Hispanic and also identify as white, or you can identify as Black. And so it's the ethnicity and the race are different. And also just not all of our Latinx kids speak Spanish. So they're not necessarily coming from a family that speaks Spanish, or most likely not even multi-language learners. They've been here. But what's great about this slide is that compared to kiddos who identify as Latinx and then kids who don't, there's hardly any difference in terms of the points of growth. So that's always exciting to me. And then math.
So even though math is showing we're moving across at a somewhat slower pace, we are seeing growth. We are seeing achievement. You're seeing the difference at 31% in the green. Now we have 48%. From the deep red, we've reduced from 7% to 5%. But if you look at red overall, you've reduced from 19 now to 11%. We want that obviously to go to 0, but that's through the work of the support and the intervention that the schools are putting in place.
And that means a student has grown a grade level or more in less than a year when they move that way. So that's. Yes.
Again,
Heather, I just want to ask one clarifying question. So just because there is at this point in the academic year, just that slight distinction between the green that has like the slash marks through it
Right.
and the green that does not have those marks. So because really right now
Yes, it's
You
the green with
want-
the mark.
with the slash marks.
Yeah.
So that's great that we have kids who are moving forward into green in general, but that means that they are where we would have anticipated them to be at the beginning of the academic year.
That's correct. So the ideal is that everyone comes in at green and everyone ends at green with the stripes in it, because that means they're have grown to be ready for the next grade level in terms of the standards.
so you see something similar at the, as you break it out by schools, you're seeing that same movement across. The green area is growing, but just to Mrs. Trulio's point, obviously we want the green with the lines in it to be the area of the most growth. But we need to see that movement across the line graph from right to left. The more we can move students at all points of the year from red to yellow to eventually green, the better off they are, the better off what we've been doing. We know it's been working.
I want to point out that the K here is a little bit higher because it must be, and that a few kindergarten kids have taken the test, which is why it's there, but it's not representative of all kindergarten. I just want to, so I would disregard kindergarten, but all the others are representative of the growth, right? And as you can see, almost all of them are in that high performance, high growth, or close to it quadrant.
All right. And then similarly, we started to break out the subgroups as you saw with ELA. And we are seeing, obviously, again, the movement and some improvement. We're seeing it at a little bit slower pace than the aggregate.
It's a special one.
You're moving faster than me.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Go back.
No, go ahead. And so that was low income, and now we're looking at special education here. And there's unfortunately less green we're seeing with this subgroup, but we are starting to see, if you look at where they were in the fall, we are starting to see more movement across from right to left.
The point difference between the aggregate and the subgroup are larger in math as well. And again, it's why we're continuing to address math and curriculum and instruction, and next year will be the full implementation of illustrative math K-8.
Special education IEPs and 504s
IEPs.
This is just
Just IEP, so 30% of our population are on IEPs, roughly.
No, just over 20%. Last week.
It's saying 344 kids.
Out of 14.
We're
Oh, no, it's actually more.
33.
because- Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
20%.
they kindergarten.
Yeah, yep, got it.
I think we're just exceeded 20%
Okay.
in the last look in terms of our Sims numbers.
How many on 504s?
That I don't know as readily.
I can look.
Do you have it?
Just like I did, just,
I would hesitate to give an approximation.
because I think a lot of those kids are still finding their way too.
Mhm.
Really are. All right.
20% traditional for districts.
We have, during my tenure, we have hovered between 15 and 20 with 20 being our high. We are seeing many more referrals this year and last year than we had seen in the past, as you can see, just preschool information we brought last meeting. I haven't looked at other districts. I don't know if you've looked at other districts' numbers. I did sneak a peek at Long Meadow. Not sure why. But they're hovering around 18, 20 as well.
And also for the younger kids, of course, we were talking about the fact that the early intervention really wasn't happening the way it normally would. So that's the first step towards trying to and I don't mean avoid an IEP, but like the response to intervention is like, what are the things we can do before we determine whether a student really needs that IEP or not? And a lot of kids weren't getting those early intervention during.
Can I ask a quick question? Yes. I'm just going back to, I think some of these numbers look very encouraging. I'm happy to see a lot of this. Just a quick question for you with the I-already math for 1 through 8. I was looking just comparatively between Mountain View and Maple Street, noticing that they both started the school year well in a very similar fashion. And I was just wondering what you might attribute. There's a huge discrepancy between the Maple Shade and Mountain View growth differential there. And I was just wondering what your take was on that, because that's staggering to me.
I mean, there's two things, right? Regardless of the kids in front of us, we need to remove the barriers so all can access the curriculum. The other, Maple Shade does have a higher population of high needs kids.
Mhm.
So it's, the give and take. But that's not an excuse to say, everyone is.
Right. I'm not looking for an,
Right.
I was just wondering what your take on that might be. Right.
Yeah,
I think that's a big part of it.
yeah.
That you have
Yeah.
a higher percentage of your high needs population at Maple Shade.
Yeah, I understand. It's just
Yeah.
pointing that out.
No, and it's a area that we've seen, yeah. All right. I think we're on learners.
Thank you.
And this is your ELL subgroup, and they made other subgroups as well. You're seeing, obviously, math, a little bit less movement across when compared with the non-English learners. But this might be combated more readily because we're using so much more ST math. Would I be correct in saying
So
that?
one of the personalized program that we use for math and when kids are using the computer is not language-based. It's all designed so that that's not a barrier. And then illustrative math, obviously, like most curriculum, there's language there, but that's part of our UDL work is to, remove whatever barriers we need to if kids need translation or different things like that. But it's really hard to get away from language in math in general.
This is starting to break down race and ethnicity, next few slides, as we did before. And you can see, that we are again, seeing growth, but we need to be cognizant of
That's what it is.
where there may be students that are still struggling and dig down deeper as to why. Be similar, our Hispanic students, and Ms. Brown explained how this proliferates as people enroll with the DESE information. But compile it differently in iReady in terms of bringing it all back together.
The interesting thing here, though, is that there's a 15-point jump. Kids who were in the green to the kids who were in the green in the winter. And for kids who didn't identify, there was only an 8-point jump. So.
There is an interesting correlation, and this is something that I think asked earlier. When you start to dig down on some of this data, and then you also then correlate it with attendance data, that's where sometimes you're seeing quite a significant situation where students are not coming to school. And so that's where, as we look at attendance data and talk about what our outreach and what our approach is to situations where students are not coming to school, that we need to continue to look at those processes and see what and how effective our outreach has been.
Didn't we used to have a truancy person? Somebody.
Truancy officer?
Officer, like somebody that, like it was years ago though, that would go out. I know.
Not during.
Sometimes
my
do great.
tenure, but generally, we have our assistant principals and principals do a lot of the content and do, we've had assistant principals at the middle and the high school do home visits. We've had meetings with parents. That's been a lot of the outreach, but certainly if it's not a home visit or a meeting with a parent, it may be a phone call as well as an email or in terms of the patterns we're seeing and what we would like to discuss in terms of plans for support.
And can I just clarify, so 6, 7, and 8, they're using iReady both for the diagnostic and for instruction.
Correct.
And then K through 5, is that still choice based on buildings?
We're all using SC Math.
So everyone there is using ST Math for instruction, but taking the diagnostic through iReady.
Right, the personalized instruction.
Right.
Not the teacher instruction.
Got it. Okay.
And before we even dive into the PSET data, one of the things that I'll just say up front, because as we've done and looked at utilizing PSET now in the second year, and we probably will do it again for a third year, but this is where we're scheduling a day and having 9th, 10th, and 11th graders all take the PSET. And you'll see with some of the data that we're going to show, there may be some test exhaustion. There may be less sincerity for folks who maybe took the test. And so we have to also look at that. But in discussing some of this with the high school administration, they would like now to move into iReady and utilize the diagnostic and start to look at that. And again, not necessarily take away this data point, but add another data point that's consistent as to what we've been utilizing K-8. And so that's something that we are investigating and hopefully looking to put in place at least for the 9th and 10th grade next year.
Also allows you to have the data 3 times a year.
Right.
Do they feel that the kids, like when you were saying that sometimes kids might not be taking it as serious? I see kids, they're just like, can you tell,
The
can
ninth
teachers
graders-
tell if they're doing their job, even the little guys? Like, oh, this one's doing much better in class, or do they find that happens more often than not?
The nice
In
thing
terms
about
of PSAT
iReady.
or iReady?
iReady and into
The nice thing
PSAT.
about iReady is they have rush flags. So there's a yellow flag that says there's a chance this kid rushed, so you can
Okay.
probably talk to them. and there's a red flag that says the kid definitely rushed because there's less than 3 seconds between each answer.
Okay,
And so they'll have the kids retake, they'll have a conversation. It goes through me because it used to be that teachers could reschedule it and sometimes kiddos were getting rescheduled, you know.
yeah,
I mean, to have to do this a couple of times,
Yeah.
now they write to me, hey, can you turn this back on for the kid? And I'll look and see that they had that red flag
okay,
conversation. PSAT is a little harder to monitor because you're walking
Right.
around, but I mean, especially because the proctoring, even if they are just going A, B, you can't say anything.
right. That's true.
And it's whole school.
So with the iReady going into high school, we'll have that flag, which will help us as well.
Okay,
So this was similar to last year. We took a look at sort of how our ninth graders compared to both the state and the nation. And similar to last year, our ninth graders were meeting at a higher percentage, both benchmarks. As you can see, versus 54% versus 29% with the state and 34% with the nation. Similar to what we've been seeing with iReady, we're seeing better in the ELA than we're seeing in the math. And that stays true whether it's 9th, 10th, or 11th. I'm sorry.
You want to go to 10th?
Oh, I thought you were making a
No.
point.
Oh, no, just that comparatively, they did better this year. And this is not the same cohort of kids,
Correct.
but the ninth graders this year got the 76% met the evidence-based reading and writing. Last year was 69%, and then 49% met the math benchmark last year, and this year is 61. Two different groups of kids.
actually, next year, when you have the numbers for both of the kids, it might be good to see it. You know, we used to have some MCAS.
So,
Yeah.
and you're gonna see, so this is last year's 9th grade, now 10th grade.
Okay,
And in a minute, we'll show you that.
They were a group that last year, similar to, although it's two different tests. Then the 8th and 9th test is different than the 10th grade test. It's
10th grades are.
basically the 10th grade test is what the 11th graders take. But you see some drop off, you know, they performed as a 9th grade group better. And here they are performing just below where the state in terms of meeting both benchmarks and right at where the nation performs. And so those are things that are certainly things that correlate with some of the things we're seeing with, say, MCAS or iReady at other grade levels. The interesting piece that is harder to show in a presentation like this, but is something that PSAT has given us is, you know, the debate of whether students are taking it sincerely when you mandate that all students take it 9th, 10th, 11th, you schedule a day. It can go many different ways. One of the values is that as we break down the data and we start to look at different groups, and then you look at say grades, and you see that, wow, this 10th grader or this 9th grader shows that they met benchmarks and are on track to be college ready, but then their grades are not showing the same thing. That's something that has created discussion and has been very helpful for our counselors and our administrators as they start to break that down. And that was something that those conversations got going more so this year than last year.
One of the things too, when we did our equity audit, was looking at, you know, who is taking honors classes, classes, and who's not. And so one of the other things that comes with the PSAT, that if you take it seriously and do your best, has the AP potential. So we'll let you know, and your counselor can help with that too, just different AP classes that you might think about doing because you did this well on the PSAT. So having that in front of you and a counselor saying you should try, we're hoping that will also encourage more kids to push themselves academically when they can.
Go ahead. Are educators given an opportunity to analyze this data for their students?
For the teachers.
Yes.
So right now, administrators and counselors have access, but as we continue to break it out, We are trying to move, all of this is captured in Panorama.
Mhm.
And so what we would like to do is continue to provide professional development so that we can do that, that we can start to break it out. But right now, it's more counselors or administrators presenting probably to a larger group, whether it be department heads or a faculty meeting.
Cause then I'm curious, does their instruction, is it driven by this data? Or how do we know they improved because of the instruction, or like, where do we make that connection? If the teachers aren't able to see the data and it's like, oh, well, this kid isn't doing well here, so my class isn't doing well here. Right. So I need to change my instruction, or I need to review this standard again, or.
Right.
Yeah, so
One of the
unfortunately,
kids are actually acing this part, so where is there a gap in our curriculum?
so which is why this, where it's one shot in the fall, is a little bit more challenging than if we, which is another reason why I think the high school with discussions with us are looking to go to iReady so that they can have that more often and have that breakdown. Because after the fall and whether it be MCAS or PSAT data, then it becomes more your classroom data.
Mhm.
And in the cases of, say, students who maybe have not passed the MCAS yet, then it becomes, okay, here's the interventions and plans we put together before the November retake. We did have a high percentage of the individuals who took the November retake pass it. So we are having success there, which is great. The other piece that, we have had good success over time with, even though our scores are down right now, is as students catch up, they are graduating. So our graduation rate has basically stayed the same. But it would be far better if we could move scores up so that not only are we having that high graduation rate, but we're putting students in the best opportunity. So when they leave us, they have a number of options that they can look at. Where are they going? Are they going on to higher education? Are they going into the career world? Are they doing something different in terms of maybe a gap year of some kind and then moving on to other things? And that's really the goal, is making sure that that's where they are earlier in their career, so that throughout the opportunities are there.
But to get back to looking at the data, we're thinking that the iReady it will definitely be more user friendly than this. And then we also don't have as much of the argument as there's test exhaustion, this kid didn't take it, it's like, well, it was 30 minutes, it shouldn't.
Right.
So, but it's really designed more for looking at that student data in terms of a student view, a classroom view, looking at groups, and then also looking at gaps in our curriculum. So we're thinking it'll be a lot easier for teachers to use it. And then they'll have it like Mr. Smith was saying 3 times a year, so you can see growth and other things like that, rather than waiting the whole next year. And you might not even have that kid again.
No, and I think it's definitely a step in the right direction, having some kind of data for all of the kids.
Right.
But with 9th and 10th grade as well, we really want to try to make sure that they're being prepared for the MCAS as well in 10th grade. So I'm not sure about iReady in high school. I'm not sure what it looks like. But I'm hoping that it somewhat mimics what the MCAS might look like and what the questions.
The questions definitely do.
Um,
The questions to a high school level, the instruction doesn't. And the other thing about iReady is it does not assess writing. So that is something that you still have to do internally, because and it's not like there's somebody on the other side, like the MCAS looking at students' writing, but
So one of
there
the
is the
things,
opportunity
though,
for teachers to look at student.
There might be other platforms that we could
look at.
look at too.
Sure.
So,
For writing.
Yeah.
yeah, for
A lot of times with the
Maybe
writing, it's
10th or.
scored by AI, and it necessarily the quality of the writing, it's, the complexity. of
Technicality.
Right.
sentences. And
A
so
lot of times the teachers still need
you
to.
have to look at it.
Yeah.
Right.
Same with math. I mean, the kids can click the different things, but you get much more information seeing how a child approached a problem and,
Right.
solve. So.
And I mean, again, seeing if your entire class is failing at this one question,
Mhm.
it's.
And you can
provides
dig
your
deeper.
instruction, yes, and you know that maybe you need to review this question, the standard or.
And that's what I always say about the iReady. It's a great universal screener. It claims to be diagnostic. It gives you a little bit of information, but it really is more like this is where you as a teacher need to dig deeper with your own tools.
So actually, one of the things that Panorama has allowed us to do, because it has the iReady scores, it has the MCAS scores, it has their grades throughout.
Survey data.
It has the survey data and has the grade data. It's all there. So they have done more of that, not at all grade levels, but as they start to focus in, say, on the 9th grade level. And that's one of the areas that contributed to, say, students being scheduled in the foundations course. That's where one of the math teachers at the high school has been designated more of helping with some of the basic skills and getting ready for MCAS and so forth. And those would be at the early grade levels. And then at the 11th and 12th grade level, that's where our graduation coach has come into play more often, although that might be some personalized learning platforms that they're using because she's not able to necessarily teach all academics, but she's monitoring and managing and helping students plan and set goals and so forth. And we're seeing a lot of success with that. They had incredible success last year with it. And we're seeing similar success this year.
I have a question about you guys.
Sure. Yeah.
So when I'm looking at the 11th grade, which I know we're getting to,
Yep, I
Yep.
just put it on for you.
Nice.
the math, I can't even, and I know we're working on it. Because we should never be lower than the national, like ever, never, never. I do see hope, I'm gonna say it, the 9th grade. So what are we doing with the 9th graders? Because they are above the national average by quite a bit. And even in the math specifically. And yeah,
So there's a little bit of
is this all new stuff you've been?
have two former 11th graders right here. And although I'm sure they took it very,
Yeah, what's up?
there is some thought in terms of, no, all I was asking was in terms of there is some debate and and it's gotten some healthy debate as we sit with the administrators and the counselors and we go through all this. If you force everyone to take it on that one day,
Mhm.
are they taking it seriously? Are they doing their best work versus, maybe still do the day, but make it optional? And so that debate has gone back and forth. I did not concede in the last.
Saying the nationwide numbers are kids who wanted to take it as opposed to us.
Possibly, yeah.
All right, the 9th grade is figuring it out though.
There's another element to that, which I'm sure our two seniors here who applied to college. There was also a trend over the last 5 years moving away from standardized tests, and you have many more schools that are not asking for standardized tests as part of the admissions process. And so that also put our guidance counselors in an interesting dilemma because you had this hard charging superintendent who's PSAT, and they're going to conferences and doing their own professional development. And it's not about necessarily any more standardized tests, although there are.
It could come back.
Everything's cyclical and it's starting to come back.
It is.
But
And in fairness to the 11th.
so there,
graders,
yeah, so there's.
started this mess in 9th grade with them as.
Yeah, and so it does make it seem somewhat contradictory
Hmm.
where
Yeah.
we're saying, hey, let's think about grades, let's think about your extracurriculars, let's think about the whole package. Don't worry so much if you're not an incredible test taker, because there's a lot of schools, top-notch schools, who no longer are asking for standardized testing. That's on the admissions process. And then you have a school and a district who are saying, everybody's going to take the PSAT.
No, and I'm not
To do your best.
think it's a bad idea to do. I really don't, because I think it's gonna come around and it gives them practice and all of that, but I just noted that the 9th graders.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Both years
Yeah,
outperformed.
they did.
Yeah.
So I'm,
It's a different
whatever's
test.
happening, I'm hoping
They're much more compliant in 9th grade.
it just has to do with what we're doing in math now in the younger grades. You know what I mean? I guess that's where I'm from.
We would like to say that it's all that. It's what
Yeah.
we're doing with math in the younger grades. It's that, things that have been done over time are really paying dividends. We'd love to say it was all that, but we can't claim that.
Okay.
But those are the questions and the debates we're having because they're all legitimate questions.
Yeah,
And again, not these two individuals, but you may have witnessed as you took these tests last year that there were some in your room possibly that were taking them in a
Making
less sincere
snowmen.
way.
Yeah,
I
think I,
I can't say that firsthand, but I don't know if you witnessed some of that firsthand.
I would say so.
Okay.
Certainly, yep.
So, and that's what the counselors and the administrators are also reporting to us. And so we're looking for what is the best path, and it seems to always be somewhat of balance of.
I know your original
move
intent.
Into these other,
yeah, have kids who never would have taken it, take it.
correct. And so we're continuing to try to remove barriers. We want them to have the experience of taking it a few times. And if they are sincere about it, it's never going to hurt you.
Right.
If you've taken it a few times, it's not going to hurt you in whatever you do. It may help you with a school. You may find, as some of our students found, and this was a data point that I talked about earlier. Wow, I'm actually doing quite well on the PSAT, but then we have to figure out, why aren't you doing as well in your grades? And that's on us.
Yeah.
And that was a huge data point that was really generated great discussion. Because we all agreed, wow, we have to figure this out. Why,
Johnny
Do-
aids the.
why do we have someone, that makes no sense.
Yeah.
That this person is struggling in whatever it is, 9th, 10th grade, English or math, and yet on the PSAT, they crushed it.
Okay.
So that has been really beneficial, and it's very clear what we need to do there, and that's get down and meet with students individually. Sorry, we're taking a lot of time. Let's move.
The next one is the current 10th graders, their PSAT this is the evidence-based reading and writing, the PSAT in 9th grade, then 10th grade. And then 10th grade's kind of repeated here. I'm a little confused about why, but it just shows projected into the future that they're going to continue to be in meets or exceeds the benchmark as a whole. So just kind of talking about what you're saying, that progression.
Mhm.
And math is obviously not looking as well.
Now, the interesting thing here, and you do see this, but again, it's more over the previous years, it's been choice. If you go look at our SAT scores, when they actually take the SAT,
Mhm.
they're outperforming these projections.
And that's,
Um,
those are the kids who want to take the.
Correct. Those are the kids who want to take it. And so these are the things that sort of wrestling with.
Okay.
We'd like to think that everyone, when given an assessment, are giving their best effort, but we're not sure that that's always happening. Maybe if we offer the Dunkin' Donuts,
Never know.
I could.
Yeah, like if they improve over the year before, they'll get put into a pool for something better than a.
Additional participation.
Yeah.
11th grade, you're seeing school crafts. You're seeing at least the green initially, and then unfortunately, you're seeing that the projection is that they may not be in that same place, whether it be
Yes.
or math on the SAT. But this was something that we double checked in terms of, here's where we were. We took the PSAT, what's our actual performance, and we are outperforming it. Thankfully.
This is the evidence-based reading and writing, and then this is the math. For the current 11th graders. Well, they took it in 10th grade this year, and then what they project into the future for the SAT.
So, I mean, we've been sort of giving a lot of the key takeaways as we went along, but certainly it was nice to see, as I said early on in the survey, teachers are seeing positive growth. SEL survey, that's what they're experiencing as in their K-2 classrooms. We're also always happy to see that our students continue to report that they have that supportive relationship, that there is someone in their school to whom they can go problem solve. I think that's probably the most crucial question on that survey. However, we know that students, especially now that the year is at the midpoint and we've gone into a lot of different things, that students are struggling with challenging feelings. They're still struggling with routines and engaging peers. And so those are things that we have to continue to work at and support students in. It was nice to see that our subgroups and our aggregate were showing growth. No, it's not different than what we saw in the fall data, that math remains the challenge in terms of across grade levels, how quickly our students are picking up if they were behind grade level or just showing actual growth through the year. One thing that was interesting, I didn't say this point, is that I think the numbers, although a little bit behind in percentage points, are very similar to where they were at the midpoint. Our green was percentage points in some cases, but they're very similar to what they were. More to come as we do the mid-cycle review, and we'll have the whole leadership team here.
That'll be in 2 weeks.
Next meeting, yeah, 2 weeks. Mark your calendars.
Gordon, to that point,
Mhm.
will there have discussions already begun relative to like the summer academies that were run and how this data and then the end of year data will help to shape the content that will be delivered through those academies?
Yes, we've already begun discussions and do plan to run the summer academies. Ms. Brown has already begun, but she posted for the position of the coordinator, and we should have that wrapped up relatively soon. And then we'll start looking at in terms of whom we invite and what the curriculum looks like. And we'd like to run it at all 3 levels: elementary, middle, and high school. And we do want to also make a note. I know you know this, but in case we have a lot of people watching after they got that snow day call. They can stay there. There's a difference between our special education programming in the summer and our summer academies. And sometimes that gets confused, but yes, we are running those again. We have begun the discussions with principals. They, at the last leadership team meeting, dug into this data. Bless you. We do need to dig in more. We actually have 3 surveys we need to look at. We have this survey, this data, but we have the survey for staff that we just did. We did a wellness survey for staff. And then to one of the questions that was asked previously, I forget by whom, what are they going to take back to their faculty? Because we want them to share the data with their faculty. And so we have yet to,
Conversations.
I'm sorry?
And have those conversations.
Right, and have these same kind of conversations. The tough part is, as you know, I mean, we took just about an hour and a half almost on this presentation. When we meet as a leadership team, we might discuss this for an hour or 2 hours. And then with faculty, you get an hour by contract, and then people are leaving. And understandably so, because they've had a long day, they've taught all day. And so that's the challenging part, is when and how. And so I think the more we can do similar to what the high school is trying to do, where they can start to break it down, and if they can get to somewhat of the house structure, but they're definitely starting it with the 9th grade, where they've designated a counselor for 9th graders, and they have one assistant principal working with that counselor, as well as starting to work with 9th grade teachers. Then they can start to problem solve some of these other issues that might be coming up, and they can look at data and look at really readiness, high school readiness, in terms of not only their academic courses, but MCAS and so forth, which is
They also
something they
have their
started in the
MTSS.
fall. Yeah. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we continue in 2 weeks. Thank you all for
Sure.
all that hard work. We all move forward then with, do we have a check from Griffin Bear from Maple Shade that we are in need of acceptance?
Say,
It doesn't make you.
I move to approve the check of $1,463.66 from Grin and Barrett to go into the gift account at Maple Shade School.
Meant to accept, right?
To accept.
Yeah. Motion made by Beth. Second by Antonella, discussion. All in favor say aye.
I,
Aye, those opposed nay, motion carries 5-0.
Great, thank you. I'll get that deposit.
Right, you have not passed out the revised.
No, I did.
You did, okay, beautiful.
Then you're, yeah,
Okay,
everybody has the revised page 2.
What's everybody doing? You just- We're good? Great.
keep it moving, okay. All right, so Blair just passed out a revised, part of the budget presentation and discussion. But we did want to just bring everybody up to speed, that on the 23rd, Governor Healy released her governor's budget. So that's the first of 3 budgets that ultimately will end up creating what becomes the state budget for the next fiscal year. However, we've always used the governor's budget, which generally comes out in January, with the exception of when you have a new governor coming in, as sort of the benchmark of where we think Chapter 70 will be. And so on Thursday, as we thought we were pretty close to being done with the informational packet, we all of a sudden got this email and this breakdown, and Governor Healy's proposal is pretty incredible in terms of its funding for Chapter 70 and for towns in terms of unrestricted aid. The 9.8% increase to Chapter 70 is, I believe, the highest increase in the last 2 decades. And with that, they're fully funding again I think it's the 2nd year, but it might be the 3rd year of the Student Opportunity Act. And so as they continue to fund that, there are, elements in that sort of drive where your Chapter 70 may be. One of those elements, or a few of those elements, are your low income percentage, your ELL percentage, and your special education percentage, all of which we've talked a little bit about tonight as we're looking at data. And so we saw last year, our Chapter 70 increased by a considerable amount with just over 800,000. In Governor Healy's budget, our Chapter 70 could increase by $2 million, which I've never seen in my tenure as superintendent. And so that's pretty incredible. That doesn't mean every town around us is seeing that kind of increase, but there are towns, because we had to pinch ourselves to make sure that we were reading this correctly. And so we did do some double checking to see if there were towns around us that might have seen similar increases, and there are. And it does seem to come down to some of the things they were saying, as they're looking to fully fund the Student Opportunity Act and support education as a whole. You're seeing some pretty significant increases for some districts across the Commonwealth. And so we're excited about these numbers. We know that they're preliminary, but that generated then some of the changes that you see, which I know Ms. Blair is going to walk us through far better than I could, and sort of generated our excitement. And then, of course, we had hoped to get all of this to you on Friday, and then the power went down, and so you got it on Saturday. So that was my intro, Ms. Blair.
All right, so as you can only imagine, I am so excited about a $2 million increase to Chapter 70 and what this can be for the school department and the entire town. So what I wanted to do is put those numbers into the chart there so that you could see, what does that look like? So on the first page there, where I've highlighted in yellow, I start with, I put in the 34,651,775 of the proposed school budget that was discussed at the last school committee meeting on February 6th. And I backed into then by pulling out the that 15,037,448, which is the proposed governor's budget amount, to then put the local contribution amount in. Is everyone following me? Okay, I'm there. So what does that show? It's actually a $674,000 reduction to the local contribution compared to what they had given the school department last year, which is really very, very exciting for all of us. So then I wanted to take it to the next step, which is why I gave you a revised page 2. After rereading it, it seemed a little confusing, and I thought I would try to clarify that for you. So what I did want to say is up at the top, of course, we talked back on February 6th, and I had estimated Chapter 70 increase at $670,000. Far cry from $2 million. So that changed very quickly for us in the picture that we wanted to paint for you and what our recommendations might be to prompt some discussions going forward on what we could actually do. So I've already told you that you know, it's a huge reduction for the town's local contribution. Gordon and I then sat together and we wanted to go through this. So what this does include, this one at the bottom of page 2, and what I'm talking about here, this includes the 14% out of district tuition amount that we had spoken about. It also includes transitioning 3 paraprofessionals and 5 permanent building subs from ESSER 3 grant into the operating budget. We spoke about that. With the release of the governor's.
May I say something before we?
Sure.
So just one of the things that we tried to stay consistent with this recommendation is we had been asked early on by the town, some representatives of the town council, and then all of you, you know, what are the main challenges? And if you remember, our main challenge as we looked at this budget was the 14% out of district and making sure that we're appropriately staffing the preschool as we continue to look at what and how we're supporting students that are coming to us for the very first time. And so that's what, as we looked at this, we tried to continue to stay true to in terms of this recommendation. So, thank you.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that, Gordon. So with the release of the governor's proposed budget, we recommend transitioning the preschool coordinator position from ESSER 3 to the operating budget for FY24. It just made sense to us at the time as I was putting this together. Also in this chart here includes a pre-K to 2 SEL teacher. There was a lot of discussion about that and how needed that is. There was also discussion about a custodian needed over at Meadowbrook. And lastly, this would increase the line item for special ed out of district tuitions, which would enable then the circuit breaker to use less funds for us to be able to build that account up a little bit more than anticipated. So again, I just want to remind everybody that our current budget is 33,319,015. This is a 4.9% increase, which we do realize is a large percentage, but we also felt compelled to bring forward these items for discussion. So that is 1,632,760, which would make our FY24 projected budget 34,951,775. I want to remind everyone that this is over a 15% increase in Chapter 70, and this gives us an opportunity for the school department and the town that we may never see again. So if you go down to the chart, you'll see what that actually does. Again, there's a reduction for the local contribution, which is $374,064 or negative 1.84% if this were to go forward. Again, this is the school committee's decision, and we're just bringing these recommendations forward to have conversations about. And lastly, on that very last page, and I know we'll go back to all of these items, but there was a lot of discussion about the ESSER funding, the ESSER grant, and what have we spent it on this year as we started to spend that is the large grant is $2.2 million. So I did go through it and grab the basic categories here to try to show you where we're at with that now, and where I see we're going next year. A reminder that this grant does have to be expended by September 30th, 2024. That's as of right now. Could they extend that? They could. I haven't heard anything yet. I'm hoping, but to go through what we're projecting here, you'll see the largest amount is an instructional curriculum license. Actually, I'm working with Mrs. Brown. She's gathering quotes for further discussion. 3-year and 6-year quotes, so we can try to see what kind of savings that would be. That would have to be something that you would have to vote on for us to, to approve that for us in order for us to do that.
And are they normally 1-year renewals?
It can
1
be.
to 3.
1 to 3.
Typically, they're, more like a 3-year.
And we've
Usually we
done,
can only afford the 1 year, but you have significant.
We do it 1 year at a time.
Yeah.
right,
And so what is also saved us, just as a reminder, and you can elaborate a bit, we saved a lot in curriculum because Desi offered grants for that, right?
Yeah,
So
we
that's
got some
how,
competitive grants that paid for a good chunk of the curriculum.
right? So, again, trying to strategize on how best to go forward so that we don't,
Be set for the next 6 years.
exactly. So as we gather that information, those will be further discussions that we'll bring to you. But I wanted to show you how quickly, money can go. I mean, the $2.2 million, the summer school, we were talking about summer school before. So what this is showing here is that 3 summer school programs, elementary, middle, and high school for both this upcoming summer, but also the following summer, because if those funds are with us until September of 2024, then we have 2 more summers. So we're really excited about that.
Why the 60 to the 400? 23 to 24.
The 6
You
will
had-
probably increase.
Well, that was this,
60 was last,
that was last year. Yeah.
Yeah.
and we didn't
Why are we
run
going
it,
to 400 though?
it's 2 summers, running 2 summers.
Summers,
We didn't,
That's 200 each though.
we didn't run the middle school.
Right. So we're hoping to do
I'd
all,
like to expand some of the programming.
Is the
But that's 3.5 times as much.
it's just a guesstimate we're doing.
But why are we doing 3.5 times as much for that line item?
Because we'd like to make it better.
But how are we gonna fund it the year after? If we put a $400 price tag on it and then there are 200,000,
They are.
we'll have to put in the operating
Yeah.
budget.
I mean, that's something that we do.
There's the reoccurring costs that we're gonna fund with a grant.
Are the programs free?
Yes, for the
Okay.
students, yeah. And this is just one funding source, ESSER 3. So there was other funding sources in addition to that for the summer school in the past. It didn't equate to $400,000 as the point you're making, but we also don't want to put a ton of personnel on there either. So
And ESSER 3, one of the things
This
is
is-
learning loss and
Right.
helping kids.
Yeah, but if we create a program that costs $200,000 a year, we're gonna have a program that costs $200,000 a year.
But I would also say, Greg, too, like it doesn't, I think the goal, especially of programs like summer school, would be that you don't have to have as many students attending them based on the impact that it's having going into each academic year. So if there is a front loading of funds based on, especially the data we just saw tonight, then hopefully by the summer of 2025, we wouldn't necessarily have to have as many students enrolled in a summer school program at all 3 levels.
right.
Is this a program that parents sign their kids up, or it is highly recommended that you have your child come and do this?
Both.
We though want to, with the students that we're recommending, they get first option.
And so this is keeping 3 paraprofessionals on the ESSER grant and 5 permanent building subs, as well as custodial support and that unforeseen expenses that arise. And again, this is just a draft. We try to come up with the best plan on the basic categories, but it can change as needs change. So I wanted to give you those points because that was an important discussion at the last meeting. And I'm sure we want to now discuss things further.
Yes. Right. Okay, so what did the town tell us for an increase? They
Town basically had, in our meeting had said,
Anything.
didn't really.
no, they didn't give you a percentage. They said that they had asked for level services budgets from the other departments.
Oh, okay.
We had discussed with the town council, at least our challenges that we had looked at, which we've outlined again tonight in terms of the out-of-district costs going up incredibly, making sure that we appropriately staff the preschool. And so we had spoken about the SEL teacher, which got some discussion. And then I think Ms. Hill had said, when I explained it, that it had been a position that was cut
Mhm.
2 years ago, that, it's somewhat of a recovery position. I thought, but I could be wrong on this, that we had also discussed the idea of a custodian at Meadowbrook because we have expanded there, but I don't know that we did.
We didn't really get into that part of the
So,
conversation. I,
Stayed with, so they're at least aware of the pre-K to 2 SEL teacher in this recommendation. We also, given the additional chapter 70, we did move over. We had kept in the last presentation, we had kept the preschool coordinator on ESSER.
okay,
But at some point, we knew we were gonna have to move that preschool coordinator over to. And so our preschool coordinator, if you remember, is both a coordinator and a service provider.
Right.
Speech and language pathologist. It was, we knew specifically as we broke that down last year that those services were the ones that were needed the most and we felt could contribute the most. But we are finding in year one that 50% and 50% really is not the percentage, that it's more towards the coordinating piece at the moment.
because I saw the job, was there a job poster for that?
Yeah, we're looking for we haven't found one, SLP to help us out in terms of picking up hours.
So the chapter 70 money
This year.
isn't like a grant that comes directly to, it goes through, goes through the town.
That's
And
correct.
the town needs to give us those funds, just
Part of-
that's part of
That's correct.
our budget. So here's my thought process. I
Sorry.
see what you're doing and I understand what you're doing. I don't want, we've been in front of the town council now and we're kind of like, hey, this is what we're thinking. And now we're coming back with a candy jar open.
Doesn't make sense.
And I'm concerned about how does the state give us, what's going to happen next year?
Money left over.
Okay, so, but that may never happen again. And then are we setting ourselves up for?
Indirectly, it's federal stimulus.
Indirect.
Yeah,
Because
You know.
it's the money that we all received.
right.
Individual, because they had record-setting tax revenue come in last year.
Yeah,
We all got money.
right.
And businesses and so forth, but.
I don't
and
think,
so,
that- well,
so anyway, they're record-setting tax.
Right. No, we
Yeah.
have extra money.
And, and
There's extra
what I
money.
think is
it's an
doing,
extraordinary situation.
It is.
the state is doing, I think it's strategic planning in terms of trying to set up trust accounts. Came from information we received from the Massachusetts Taxpayers Association, where they're taking this money and they're trying to put trust accounts to deal with issues that could arise later, because we know you're not always going to be in this situation.
Well, I
Just if you've lived the past 10 years, you realize you're not going to always be in this situation.
know that. And I guess I'm feeling like, okay, so we get an increase of 2 million and like, so if we said to them, hey, look at half of that can maybe go toward this budget and half, understand maybe.
How about capital?
But you have to use it this year. So you have to do
Right.
something that's.
No, I'm saying in terms of them, yeah, we're gonna use it, take it, but in terms of what we take from the town.
Right, but the town has to use it this year too. It's gonna flow. So the additional chapter 70, and I'm not disagreeing necessarily with you. We were trying to stay true in the small window of time. That
we
we
got
had,
pretty
and we got this on Thursday.
I understand that and I,
So we did. We got overexcited maybe. But we felt that we should at least look at the challenges that we had outlined. And one of the things that got great discussion, if you go back, the last meeting and the meeting before was, well, 14% increase. Oh my God, that's $2 million. And there was a large discussion about that. This allowed us to at least look at that in terms of, well, maybe you increase your operational budget around out of district tuition more so that you're able to manage and roll over more circuit breaker to mitigate against those things. However, with that said, we knew that we were bringing it to all of you
right,
to have a very substantive discussion as to what would be the best thing to present to the town. So these were thoughts that we thought of that stayed true and consistent to some of the challenges. But there are many ways to look at this and see how we deal with it. The one thing that we do know is the chapter 70 that comes in will flow through the town.
mhm,
They're going to have to spend it this fiscal year. So
right,
it's going to have to be in this fiscal budget, whether it comes over to us as a whole or stays in the town budget.
But
You know,
we
somewhere.
have to be cautious against directly correlating chapter 70 to the increased budget, because we have years when we get zero
Correct.
and we still have to
You're
count for
absolutely
money.
right, yeah.
So
Which, yeah, the
I
chart
think
shows.
4.9% is way too high for me. I think we should be under 4%. And we should use part of the money or release requested for capital, because there is some money here. When we can accomplish a lot of these things, still using ESSER,
Mhm.
staying under 4%. I think we can accomplish the 14% increase. We can accomplish the 5 permanent building substitutes. If that's really just the use of the substitute account.
That is.
Put in
Yeah.
instead of substitute employees, so it's no additional cost, no additional increase to the budget.
Right.
So that's kind of a wash. The 3 new paras, that would be an increase. So we could add those to the budget, so that's, I know it's not new positions, but it's newly funded through the town budget, so that's 3 newly funded town positions
Operating.
in the operating budget, yep,
They were here under ESSER last
Right.
year.
so grant funded and then changing over.
Correct.
The SEL teacher, I think we all are interested in that, so if we leave that, that's a significant increase, that's a new position, so that's. Custodian, I don't know, I mean, we could potentially do without, I think, I know it would be nice, but. Perhaps some of the duties that the custodian is doing now could be done by someone else, I know she mentioned Carline. And it's not for me to tell how the school is run, but if we don't do that right away, and then the out of district tuition, what are we talking about for that?
Well, what I was
What did I say about
suggesting that we.
use ESSER? Or put that in the.
You
operating
can't-
budget?
use
Instead of
it.
using circuit breaker, that, you know, how we talked about circuit breaker and how that's part of behind the scenes.
Yeah.
One of the funding sources, so.
Does
Then
that
we
get-
had some concerns that there wasn't gonna be enough rolling over, so.
Last meeting.
But we're gonna get the, is the 225 and the 39 that we talked
So
about?
to get rid of that 225 page, that's why I changed it.
Oh, I got the wrong one. That's, I was looking at my notes.
My apology.
That's not my fault.
It's
This one.
for now.
No, it's this one.
Okay.
So my thought is, we had that meeting with town council and we said, or I did, that we should keep it as tight as possible because we're trying to fund a high school. And in all fairness to the taxpayer, if we keep our budget low and the town council keeps their side low, then we can go out to the taxpayer and say, listen, we've done our best. There's some money here. We have $7 million in capital request funding. And we all know that traditionally we get between 500 and 700,000. So that's 1/10, right? So potentially we could put some of this money, or request at least, not up to us, up to the council, that more than the 500,000 and then we might get in a year, or 700,000 that the schools might get. And we're all one town, obviously. Then maybe it's 800,000, or maybe it's close to $1 million in capital, and we're only scratching the 7 million, because we all know when we get the new school, when we get the new
Nice.
school, then we may have to cut back on some capital investments because the taxes are going to go up significantly. So I would like to see it back to what we had talked about previously, go back to the 3.9%, fund some more of these things through ESSER. And really, we're not getting anything less other than the custodian. And we'll fund everything else and be at 3.9.
My biggest concern is if we make the 3 paras become like out of a regular budget. And we don't get the money for them and we've got to cut, we're gonna be cutting people. But I guess that's what I'm, like, if next year we come and we don't get $2 million and we don't even get like 800,000 or 700,000, are we gonna have to cut from our budget because we added too much this year? Does that make sense? Or am I not understanding
I
it?
understand what you're saying. I don't believe it will affect it. There's so much savings over like the duration of when folks retire and the change that for 3 paraprofessionals, we're not going to have a problem.
And we can put the 3 in at the 3.9 and
Yeah.
request them in the operating budget and request the SEL.
Yeah.
And still be at
And
3.9.
the preschool really needs, now remember, we're
Oh, yeah.
still keeping 3 on ESSER, so it's really 6 positions we added. And we were going to analyze, reevaluate the whole program, which Mrs. Lodi came in and there was a lot of discussion about that and a lot going on. So we're going to revamp it again but we're gonna have to keep looking at it because I don't think it's totally to where it needs to be. And I think that she, was blatantly honest, saying that we're still working on this, we're still trying to perfect it. And these little tykes, there has been a lot of change because of the pandemic. We can't deny that, you know, it just is what it is. And so by moving 3, we felt it was more responsible to do that, to try to merge this, because it's not like we're saying, oh, these are just going to go away. It's not going to happen. Our
No, it's not gonna
preschool
happen.
is just getting larger and larger. So we thought, let's take half and keep half on the ESSER, and that made sense to us. And I don't think it's going to have a huge impact on the budget.
All right, it just seems like they handed us a lollipop and pull it away. You know what I'm saying? And I don't,
But we should use it because it's there.
Yeah.
And so maybe we don't use it all in recurring expenses, to your point. And so we pull some back and request, again, it's not up to us, but part of it for capital and increase $7 million. Beth, you know, we've been requesting.
Can I just remind everybody, the way it does work is the town gets that chapter 70, and that is used to then fund the school. So then but the town, just because they gave us 20 million last year, that goes over and above, so they don't have to. They're always very generous, and we're so appreciative in that partnership and them, you know, realizing the importance of the school. But I just want to be clear about this, so we can ask, and I think it's a great
So
job.
I know it's not up to us. That's what I'm saying.
Right, it's
They
not
can
up
keep
to.
it all, decide to keep
Right.
it all,
Right.
but it's a gesture that
It
says
is. I think it's.
we're all in this together. There is a good amount of money here.
Mhm.
We have the biggest project
An
that we've ever
opportunity.
requested in this town by a long shot. This year specifically is the year to tighten up, which is what our conversation was
Right.
about with the council.
Right.
This is a tight year. We should all be tight. And so to go 4.9, we've never done 4.9.
Done 4.2.
We've never done 4.9.
And-
And this is not the year for me, even though the cash there, but it's a source. It's not a use.
So that's the
Source
last-
and use is different.
At the February 6th meeting, I brought forward the 4%. It went from 3.7 to 4%, and that was with adding those 2 positions, the SEL and the custodian. So if I pull that custodian out, that would bring us to the 3.9.
3.9.
I'm just throwing that out there to you.
And we could potentially offer more hours perhaps we have a part-time custodian now.
On ESSER, we have
Ew.
part-time custodians at all the schools that have been doing different things as needed.
Use ESSER one more year. And I know we have some things here that were laid out, which is great, but
Yeah.
I don't know that we need, all of
Again,
these
that's
big
just-
numbers and all of these lines. So let's use it for these things this one more year.
yeah,
And not put it on the operating budget and see what next year brings. The school passes and then we move forward, see what the tax rate
I
is.
don't want to seem greedy.
Yeah.
It's giddy, actually. I mean, it's exciting that they've got money finally.
We were very excited.
I don't,
And the lights went out.
Gordon, did I hear you say that there's a part-time custodian at each of the schools right now funded by ESSER?
There's not a specific person that all the schools are using every now and again, part-time custodians. There's more at the high school, a specific person who has done a lot of work, who seems to be the person they go to, and at Meadowbrook.
Okay. I was just thinking about number of the student enrollment at specifically Mountain View and Maple Shade. So when
Yeah.
you said that there was a part-time custodian at each, like
Yeah.
to Greg's
No.
point, like being able to consolidate, that might have been a spot to consolidate.
Right. They have used, for whatever reason, we seem to have a decent amount of substitute custodians this year. And so both Mountain View and Maple Shade at times have used a couple of the substitute custodians to help out with certain things.
See, and even positions like that, if we use ESSER and then ESSER goes away in a year and a half, then perhaps we add part-time or a couple hours a week if we can find people to do it,
Right.
which are much less costly than a full-time employee.
Right.
Who we offer benefits to and have to pay a full-time salary to and still accomplish the same goals.
but we can still get, which we weren't asking before, we can get at least 3 pairs on the budget,
Yeah.
right?
That's what we're requiring.
That's what, if you went back
It's
to our
still be
February
3.9.
6th proposal, that's what we had
Which
proposed.
3.9 is even high,
It is
but
high.
we saw it, right? We saw it coming
Yeah.
because of the employees that we added last year.
Mhm.
And some of the increased costs that we have. So it's real. And with the SEL position, which we see value in, these are different times and we're seeing the stress put on employees or staff members. So, it's worth making the case. I really believe we should.
Because the town doesn't like turn around and take the less money they have to.
There's no
hire more.
guarantee on that.
Is on there.
But we can't
You
hold
know,
their feet to the fire.
I know that, I know that.
with it. You know what I'm saying?
I know.
Go in with 7 or 10 new employees. Why would the town not do the
You know,
same thing?
the thought is we could, you know, express some of the thoughts that Pam had, but that we also want to be, you know, diligent in terms of moving forward and maybe putting it toward capital. I mean, we could explain to them that this has happened,
I
but
think it makes
you
a
know.
lot of sense to do that.
It's a great thought.
I agree, Greg.
I just think this is the year,
just want-
we said it, we gotta
That's a
keep
good
it
moment
tight.
there.
No, I know, right? I got the.
Too bad we didn't have that in person.
It's just, this is the year to keep it as tight as possible, like we said with the council, and this at 3.9, it's still large, but the money's there. And so the tax implication isn't there this year, but it would be next year if we were to continue with those expenses. So let's see what happens next year. Maybe we were able to add those additional positions on the operating budget. Maybe we're not. If we hit the recession that some are forecasting, we might not be able to. And then, well, it's probably pretty good we didn't add them. And it's probably pretty good we added into capital if we're able to convince them to do that.
Are we able to meet with town council like Beth said, and just kind of explain everything?
Yeah, you gotta go to finance oversight first, though.
Well, I mean, I think we can always request, and if you wanted to speak with Mr. Page,
Things have changed, right?
we do have to submit a budget to them.
Yeah.
But we know that the process is still evolving because the town manager has to submit a draft budget by April 1st, the town council. You know, hopefully somewhere in there, we might be able to, I think we'll probably be contacted by the finance oversight.
They're meeting on the 6th next week, for the
Sometime
first time.
after the
Do we
6th.
have something, do we have to submit? it
Yes,
by
We have to submit something.
So we need a
So
directive.
that's why I would propose that we do the 14%.
Well, you
We,
do a 3.9
3.9,
increase, that's $1.3 million.
Right.
To your current budget.
right, which left 700,000, correct?
Is that correct? Yep, still
We're up for discussion, which is
as a decrease in the town's local contribution from the prior.
maybe we don't need it all. We're all one town, right? So
Right.
maybe the town uses part of it,
Yeah.
but maybe we get 350 or 400,000 above the 500 or 600 that we were getting capital anyway. Usually we get about half of what capital gets,
right.
the schools get. So say they fund 1.2, which is pretty traditional. If we get 6, then maybe we get close to $1 million. We have 7 million in requests, which are never gonna get
And
done.
honestly, the pricing of just everything is so wild now that any job that we do have on the docket to be done is going to cost more money too.
And
Yeah, we,
And then we don't have to worry about how are we gonna fund that, right? I'm sorry.
we have
Sounds, you're so,
I'm chuckling because
something on the,
about that subject very soon.
like next,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So I guess I feel like then we'll be like, you know, but we have this now, so at least we can get the roof project or this or whatever we got going. I know what we got going. Too much going on. Floors.
and whatever the group as a whole decides, certainly we're supportive of that. That's why we wanted to bring this to you in terms of starting the discussion.
Right.
I do want to say, and Ms. Valers and I
did love what you.
behalf, we still were saving reducing the town's contribution with our recommendation by 374,000. But
right,
we
but-
do
but
understand
we're
and
directly relating chapter 70 to our operating budget. We can't
Absolutely.
do that in the good years and not in the bad. So I don't, we shouldn't even
Valid point,
say
Brad.
that only when we relate to capital, but we can't.
We're playing nice. We're in the same pool.
We are in the same, we're the same team. That's right. You know,
we were trying to be fiscally responsible while also being cognizant of the original challenges. that
and I
we saw.
believe that, and I understand that. And I think,
I would have loved to have been there when you got the email.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't tell you.
Now, we do have to say that, Tom Christensen was the one who shared, he was.
He got it first, the municipal.
So they're aware. that, you know,
Yeah.
This is a huge bump for us and that we're gonna be having this discussion
but then you also said there's a bump on the town side, right?
in terms of unrestricted aid. yeah.
Right, so I think collectively, we should all be on the same page, because if we all just start spending money now,
It's a
right?
great conversation, Greg.
Yeah, we should have that, because if we, let's lead the way.
And this is the year to do it,
This-
like you said. This is,
We should be tight this year, because next year, we're going for the vote in November.
Okay.
So 3.9,
Yeah, I just.
Yeah.
We need a motion and a vote.
Just to clarify, do we know
Uh-huh.
what that means? It's the 14%. The three paras.
Oh, 14%.
Yeah.
Well, we've got the 14, we talked
14.
about it's part of it.
Yeah,
Because
it's in there.
it's in the operating budget.
For special ed.
We've increased it, but we didn't increase it by the amount originally. Yeah, okay.
Oh, it's not 14% increased?
No, we didn't increase it by.
No, it was,
Okay.
I believe it was like 300,000 was originally on
Was
the.
that a
That
14%
does,
increase?
no, the 14%.
It mitigates the 14%.
Yes, thank you.
That's why.
Doesn't get us all the way.
No, that's why we'd use circuit breaker.
How many, what's the percent? Any idea?
I don't think you don't need to put the percentage.
No, I know, but I'm just curious. How far away are we from the 14?
Not too far.
Okay, but you're talking, we're gonna use more circuit breaker than we would
Correct.
because we'll have to make up for that.
Yes.
Potentially.
Yes.
Maybe not, because
And maybe.
things change every year.
And our special ed expenses have been higher, which means the.
Circuit breaker.
Will most likely be higher, and I kept it
There's a
level
reimbursement.
services to be conservative, so
Oh.
there's a lot of it, there's always
Yeah.
so many moving pieces, and it's really difficult to pin it down to just an exact, but I am very comfortable and confident that your 3.9 is 1.3 million, and we can
Okay.
do some really good things here.
Okay, good. So,
Is everybody clear on what that means, the 3.9? Yep. Sarah, you good with that?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you.
so the, motion would be like, I move to increase with.
What's
To
the,
put a request to the town.
the request?
Yep.
That
Okay.
include a 3.9% increase.
I move to create a budget or submit a budget request that would include a 3.9% increase in the,
Just including the items we discussed.
okay, in the budget, including the items we discussed.
I have them all checked.
Good, okay,
Happy you do. Oh,
I got it.
all right, I didn't want to like be like buzzkill, but I felt,
I was a bug kill earlier, so you're
were
only.
you with them? Oh, I was late in here, so I didn't get to be buzzed.
I came in this afternoon, I should say. And I understand.
Energy, I would say.
I know, right? What else is new though, right? And I understand it and in a different year, it would be a different conversation, I think. But this year, we gotta get that high school. Goal one.
I'm total agreement with you
Yeah.
on that.
Cool.
Did they all vote?
No, not yet.
Motion made by Beth.
Yes.
Second.
Second by Antonella, discussion. What do you think, Julia?
Huh?
You good?
She's like, this conversation is gonna go home probably.
No, we're gonna lie, right? That's what it is. All in favor, please say aye.
I,
Opposed, nay. Okay, that carries 5-0. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Sound peachy.
I know.
Which is good, right, John?
Percentages.
Blasts are off. $2 million, that's it.
Man.
Okay, we're gonna move on for the school committee members for the middle school principal search.
Yes, sadly, we'll need to do a search. Dr. Allen has made it official. He has signed his contract. Wish him all the best as he transitions. That's not going to happen until July 1, so we're excited to keep him for the next few months. But in the interim, we will be doing a principal search. We have posted the position. We have candidates already who have applied, and in the quick look, really qualified candidates. So we're excited about that. I've outlined the search process, and the first part of the search, you'd have a number of different people, and Ms. Brown would be running that part, which would involve both screening of applicants and then deciding on first round selections for interviews and then conducting the interviews. On that committee, we are looking for 2 school committee members. And then as we go through, so that would be a commitment starting somewhere probably around March 10th, and then having a few meetings the weeks of March 13th and March 20th. The hopes of possibly doing interviews either late the week of March 20th or that week of March 27th.
And that's usually after school.
Yes,
Because
yeah, it would be,
staff.
because we're gonna have staff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
3 o'clock-ish.
Right, 3:30.
Yep.
We would have meetings that would start and then maybe on the day of interviews, if we can get substitutes and so forth. Depending on releasing staff, we might be able to
During the
start
day.
earlier.
Mm.
Yep.
So that would be 2 school committee members that we'd like to have on that committee. And then as we move towards the finalists, I will be directing that group. And we would like to have 1 school committee member join us on that committee. We'd have the Director of Student Support Services, the MECO coordinator, and an ELEA representative on the committee.
Unless somebody really wants it, I'd like to be screening, I'd like to be part of that unless people want to jump on it.
Yeah, I mean, I like doing these things too, but I
Yeah.
understand what others want to do.
I know if you never,
I think it's gonna be hard for me right now. So I'm fine, just because I'm gonna have to get rides everywhere right now. So this might just be another layer.
Sarah,
I'd be interested in being in the committee for finalists.
Open to anything. I'm not married to one thing or the next. People are into it, go
Yeah.
for it. If. there's
okay,
places
but I would
need
do it,
people
but unless you want to do it,
No, go for it.
okay. Wait, thanks.
Good.
You want to do the finalist one? Okay, we'll do the preliminary.
yeah,
Okay.
yep.
How many are usually chosen for the finalists?
Oh, does it say?
We hope to
3?
pick 3,
Okay.
but sometimes we've had 2 if
Up here.
searches, we've had a person drop out and so forth.
And how many are there usually for the screening? Do you interview everyone that's qualified or?
Now they screen, yeah. It depends on how many applicants you get. And if we were only to get 5 applicants, we were already above 5.
Right,
Then, they'd probably interview all 5
right,
or determine to
And the committee
repost or, so, but they'll determine that.
okay.
The reputation of the school is just, in terms of its atmosphere,
Yeah.
phenomenal. And I
Big shoes.
have like this right here with it, I really do. I remember the day we hired him and it was just like
Any formal motion?
We'll get one.
a lot of people. Yeah. Yep.
Take a motion for the 3 positions, please.
Okay, so I move that, you're doing, it. Okay, Greg Thompson and Elizabeth Boucher will be on the screening first interview committee for the new, for the search for the Birchland Park Middle School principal. And, Antonella Rochella will be a finalist for will work on the, interviews for the finalists.
Okay, motion made by Beth,
Second,
second by Amy. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
On our way.
Keep that rolling. All right, so this packets, we have a door project that has been in existence. Well,
On time.
when it originally was passed as a capital plan, Denise Menard was the town manager. So, and at that point, it was carved into 3 phases, which made some sense at the time, because just as we've been discussing throughout that capital projects are expensive. If we can phase them or we can do something to mitigate the costs, it's worth taking a look at that. So we've accomplished 2 of the phases in replacing all the exterior doors going around the school. This is now phase 3, where you're really targeting the front of the school and you're replacing 2 exterior doors and then the 2 interior doors, creating that front foyer where we hopefully can do what we do at Meadowbrook, where you can have a buzzer system on both the front and then the second group of doors. Also, just bringing doors closer together, newer doors, would be much more energy efficient. And you wouldn't get that
Yeah.
wind that whipped
So
into the
gap
school.
there and those
Yeah, there's a
doors,
huge gap. However, this was approved and Similar to which a comment that I think Mrs. Boucher made earlier, prices for all capital projects have escalated considerably. It also doesn't help that generally we're doing these things where they're approved one spring and then we have to wait, to get them out and done in the next summer. So you're waiting at least 10 months.
And it's almost doubled.
What's that?
It's almost
It's
doubled.
almost double, yeah. So the bids came back. We did ask DPW to ask the contractor if they would hold that price to allow us to get it on an agenda and research potential ways to bring up this budget to make this project happen and not have it to go back into the mix of the 7 projects that we already are asking for. And so we have come up with some ways to do this, and that is outlined on the final page of the 3 pages. And so we could, in discussing with Mr. Martin, principal of Maple Shade, we could use a few different accounts. We could use the Maple Shade rental account. We could use the district-wide rental account and try not to exhaust either one of those to, make them $0. We would leave $1,000 in each one. So pull 10,000 from the district-wide rental and then 8,000 from the Maple Shade rental, leaving $1,000 in both of those revolving accounts. And then transfer from, if you remember, right now, we're seeing a larger balance in teacher salary line item. And so transfer 15,000 from the teacher salary line item over to maintenance of buildings. And then this would make up the amount of money that we need.
That was inventive.
What's that?
Inventive.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
instead of going back and
we
asking
didn't wanna-
for it,
No.
capital list again,
Right,
then it
no.
pumps everything else
Yeah,
down.
It'll be another $5, $6,
Yeah.
$7, $8,000.
Normally it would go to finance
Subcommittee.
subcommittee.
Right.
Should we vote to waive that or something? What do you think? Or we're,
Because the 2 on that committee are
yeah,
Yeah.
chair.
Up to you.
I just don't want to set a precedent that we're
Right.
not following precedent. But if everybody's okay with it, we'll just move forward then.
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Everyone understand?
Yeah.
Yep. So we'll need a motion for the fund transfer.
Yep, the mid-
And the use of the, we wouldn't typically approve the use of the building and
District-wide.
district-wide rental. We wouldn't approve the use of that, would we? So just the transfer, then we need a request, and then the understanding was
The mid-year
the rest.
transfer.
Okay,
So do you want to add that we're going to waive the financial subcommittee? in that?
sure.
Okay.
You could do it all in the same motion, just for the transfer.
All right, so I'm gonna write this down because this is a lot going on here. Okay, so
You're so good at this.
I really just took
We
right
always
over
like-
Bill's spot.
we
Remember,
always-
we used to
yes.
do it all the time.
Yeah, you're even
Okay.
sitting there.
Okay, so what am I,
Move to approve the transfer from
From-
teachers, from
for the
the
teachers?
account from teachers unit A, in the amount of $15.99.
Okay, to the main billings. That's all I have to do along with everything.
Waiving the
Okay.
financial oversight
There you go.
prior approval.
Okay, so I move to transfer from Teachers Unit A account $15,989 to the maintenance of building account for that same amount and to waive the financial subcommittee
Prior approval.
prior approval.
Excellent. Motion made
Anyways, there you go.
by Beth,
Second,
second by Antonella. Any other discussion?
good job, Beth.
Good job, Beth. All in favor, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Sign it. Motion carries 5-0. I already wrote on mine. Yeah, just like that.
Wait, why are we saying?
Okay, moving on, we have approval of out-of-state scrimmage by the East Long Meadow softball team.
So similar to other trips that go out of state, such as a lot of times you'll see field trips that go to the Connecticut Science Museum. This happens to be an athletic trip going out of state, and Mr. McGee would like to get approval to allow the softball team to scrimmage Harrison High School in New York, New York State, not New York City. And kind of outline the trip there for you. It's roughly 97 miles away. It's really moving slowly if it's going to take 2.5 hours, but safety is important. So when it's-
You're going down the highway.
2.5 hours.
If it's one of the yellow school buses, you know? The wind.
Sorry, I'm a little punchy at 8:20, but I apologize. Luckily, the superintendent was wise enough to cancel school tomorrow. So, you know, roughly 97 miles away, 2.5 hours by bus. Less if you're driving a car.
I'll make a motion.
Do it.
Thank you.
Do it.
I move to approve the out-of-state scrimmage by ELHS softball team that was presented by Mr. McGee.
Motion made by,
Second.
seconded by Amy, discussion, all in favor, say aye.
I,
Opposed, nay, that carries 5-0.
Team and Mr. McGee will be.
Excellent, good luck at the scrimmage. Have a nice ride.
Nicer.
Boosters?
Yeah.
Thanks to the boosters.
Yeah.
Lost the game.
I said the
Boosters, that is nice.
Little,
If we win.
yeah.
We're all getting punchy now. We have one last item previously discussed. We have a policy GCCA/R, which is the long-term substitute position for local music waiver. I would entertain a motion to that effect. Come on, Antonella, you're on a roll. Just read it from there.
Okay.
Move to approve the waiver. Blah, blah, blah.
I move to approve the waiver from policy GCGAR for ELHS long-term substitute position for vocal music.
A second.
Motion made by Antonella, seconded by Beth. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye, those opposed, nay. That carries 5-0. Thank you. Anybody else have anything they'd like to talk about? John?
No school tomorrow.
We got over here. No school tomorrow. Everybody enjoy the snow day. Get outside.
No, finally.
With that, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Motion made by Antonella,
Second.
second by Sarah. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
I.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. We are adjourned.